In this video, I'll be focusing on ideas surrounding teaching guitar. I'll warn you now, this video is mainly for the guitar teachers out there, but if you're a student, I would highly suggest watching this as well. I'm going to put some tips in there for students that are listening as well. And if you're running through a collection of the most common categories of teaching that I've been asked to do, at least anyway, over the last 10 years of being on the internet and teaching guitar online, also, running through the situations that I've done over the years of class instruction that I've had, because I've been doing that since 1992. I've had a lot of exposure to different situations, different people, and I got a lot of knowledge that I can pass on to you guys. We're going to discuss in this video some ideas on the best ideas that you can start off with new students. We're going to look at the study of guitar in terms of intermediate players and what you should focus on with them. Also how to offer the most help to the advanced guitar players. That's a really unique group to work with. I'll be discussing that. I'll throw in a couple other tidbits along the way, and I'll also run down some other tips for you on dealing with difficult students. Okay, let's start out with the easiest topic out there, new students to guitar. If you're a teacher and you get some people fresh off the street, never touched a guitar before, they're coming in for classes, they enroll for lessons with you. Maybe you are like me, you run an online website and they come onto the website, maybe they're going to be sending you some emails back and forth. Let me tell you the most important thing that you can pass along for the beginners, the total beginners to guitar, and that is help them plan their practice time. Practice does not just happen. It needs to be planned out. It needs to be scheduled. So if a new student can just get this one critical point down, that's the thing of just grabbing the guitar, having some good material to practice, and keeping the guitar come back to their hands through the day, multiple times through the week. If they have some kind of a situation to develop for practice schedule, that is going to be the one critical point that they're going to have a far better chance at success. So remember to help your students plan their time. If you're a new student to guitar, remember to schedule your practice. Don't just leave it up to the air, like, oh, one day, I'm going to grab the guitar this week, it'll be great, I'll do some practice. It's like, no. You need a schedule. You need to have some kind of a whole organized concept put in place for when you get home from work or you get home from school. You're going to grab the guitar, you're going to cycle through some material, and there's a schedule there that you're working on with some good material. Now, you do need good material. You need effective guitar study curriculum to go against, because if you're just kind of hacking around, learning random stuff, you're going to go all over the place. You're going to be like those people who contact me and they know a little bit about scales, a little bit about theory, generally nothing about rhythm, and it's just going to go on and on as they'll be scattered all over the place. So get some material that goes in a fantastic order and sequence and touches through all of the important areas. Learning the open position chords, learning some basics around music reading, because that's going to help you with your rhythm structure, basics on music theory, that kind of stuff. All that and directed onto the guitar fingerboard as well, because that's the other critical element that I see so often that doesn't get touched on is, people will be working on material, but it'll be really random in terms of how it's directed to the guitar. You want your material directed at the guitar fingerboard so you understand what's going on there. The other element of it, of course, is the left and right hand coordination, and that happens by way of getting your hands on your guitar. So this is the first critical element. It's the number one thing with new students. Get a practice plan together. Make sure your students have excellent study material. Use the material with a well-established practice schedule, and there's going to be success there for sure. All right, let's take a little bit of a detour away from the practicing elements, the beginner student direction we started with. I want to talk about something for a moment here that's really important, and it has to do with having respect for yourself, respect for your teacher, respect for your students. I think if you took a moment out and you were to recall every successful training that you ever done, there's likely a common theme across them, and I'll bet that it involved two main things. One would be that you were in a great headspace for taking in the instruction. You weren't in any kind of turmoil psychologically. Your parents weren't getting divorced, or you weren't breaking up with a partner. You weren't going through any kind of problems maybe where you were going broke and you had to move out of your apartment. Everything was good and balanced and even keel, and you were in a great headspace. That's number one. Number two, there was a respect present that you had for the teacher and that the teacher conveyed back to you. So from the first meeting, let's say the first class, you thought, this person is fantastic. They seem really easygoing. They seem so easy to talk to. You can ask them questions. They seem to, fire off answers, that are concise and they make sense. So generally when it comes to music teachers, there's sort of a two-tier level of respect. One is for the skill, of course, of the material. And the other one is for the teacher's ability to clearly deliver the instruction so it makes reasonable sense. And even if you don't understand what's going on from the student's perspective, you can ask questions and they will offer multiple angles of thought so that you can clear up in your mind what's happening with the material and it makes sense to you and you can move on and start progressing further. So now if those parameters are not present, it's unlikely that you'll feel compelled to want to work on any of the material being presented. And the respect goes both ways. When I was going to music college over at Musicians Institute, I had some fantastic teachers, and I had some teachers that were questionable. They weren't very nice, and they were sort of floating around, and they weren't very, easy to talk to. But maybe it was just a clash in our personalities. Who knows? Because there's so much in terms of interpersonal skills that are going on between teacher and student, and they have a whole class to attend to. So there's so much that you have to think in terms of, where are you at? Where is that person at? How are you interacting with them? And also, are you feeling compelled to go and want to work on the material that they're presenting? Because sometimes that happens too. I know it happened to me when I was going to music college, and you get material and you'd feel like, this just doesn't do anything for me. I can't, I'm going to drop out of this class, or, or that kind of scenario. And the respect that you have for teachers and for students back and forth, it goes both ways. So good students offer respect. Good teachers project respect to their students. And good teachers are also willing to change along the way, because good teachers tend to be quite flexible in their approach. Sometimes students are a little bit too naive about the way things are operating, especially if you're a younger student. You're just not as in tune yet with your interpersonal skills and dealing with people. But a lot of teachers are much older. A lot of the teachers I had over the years were in their late 30s, early 40s, early 50s. I had some teachers that were in their 60s, and you really can tell. As long as the older teacher didn't become jaded or, sort of set in their ways, they had an ability to be flexible in their approach, and they could understand that there's this level of value behind analyzing a situation that they're in with a student, and then, dealing with criticism, and then shaping how their interactions go after that. And it's just this flexible communication style that they have. So, this idea of respect is really important. It's important to notice. It's important to have as a student. It's important to project as a teacher. And I think if you include this in your philosophy as being a teacher and being a student, the interaction overall that you have with your instructors is going to be far, far better. And the better the interaction is going to happen from the teacher to the student as well. Okay, let's move on to the intermediate guitar student. So if we look back to what we were discussing before on beginners, if a beginner desperately needs a well thought out practice schedule combined with a really good guitar study system, so then what if anything changes when we upgrade the skills over to the intermediate level of guitar player? So first of all, let's clarify, what in the world is an intermediate guitar player? Well, generally what I consider to be an intermediate player is somebody that knows more or less the basics. They got all their open position chords down. They have a bit of an understanding anyway about key signatures and how scales operate a little bit. They could play a few scales maybe in open position. They got a good justification of the basic reading in first position. They kind of know some of the understandings of what's going on with the notes on the neck, and this certainly they could tune the guitar by themselves and everything, and they have a pretty clear concept on how to move on to understanding how to lift off songs from tab, that kind of thing. So that's the formation of getting the groundwork done, and then they're moving on. Now, intermediate students, you know, they're a little bit moving into the material where the open position chords are behind them. They're moving to, you know, movable chord shapes along the neck, like bar chords and some of the other shapes that are more fretted along the fingerboard. They have a much better concept on how the notes are designed in a more lateral way along the neck. They've started to study things like the cage theory and the interlocking octave systems of the fingerboard, more on fingerboard geometry, more advanced rhythms. You know, they're getting away from just reading basic quarter notes and eighth notes. They're getting into 16th notes and some triplets and some syncopation, different time signatures, music ideas with key signatures, understanding what the key signature is. I think you're starting to get the picture here on what's going on with the intermediate level player. They're kind of beyond the basics that you're going to have in a lot of those beginner books, you know, that are sold on the store shelves. So when you're at that level of intermediate, it's kind of a question here from a teacher's perspective is, well, what are you going to do with these people? You know, is it going to be really easy teaching them? Well, it depends. I mean, if you just want to fire off songs to them and teach them a song a week, well, that's pretty easy. But if you want to really help them develop their skills, it's probably going to be a lot of hand-holding with the direction of the intermediate player, because, you know, I know, at least in my studio, when I'm teaching my curriculum, that intermediate curriculum is pretty hefty. There's lots of good information in there, and it's pretty complex, you know, for most of the beginner students moving on into that intermediate course that I have. Now, with respect to all that, the student needs a solid understanding of the topics that they're studying, and I know that I need to go in and use some tricks and some ways of explaining situations, use some metaphors, use some concepts of explaining things on how their hand has to be to do bar chords, and tips and techniques and things that I've learned over all the years of teaching. So I've got this arsenal behind me of how I can help those intermediate players start blowing through the boundaries of, you know, difficulties that they have when they're moving into this more advanced level of playing. Now, for my online students, it's a little bit different, because I'm finding that the students going through the online lessons get a chance to really review through the video sections a lot on how the intermediate course examples are to be played and so forth. But I can tell you that the majority of my Skype sessions are being done with those people on my site that are at the intermediate guitar playing level and going through the intermediate program. And they can have a lot of difficulty understanding everything through that course, because there's a lot of complex material in there, and most of it is involved with needing a boost in the direction of thought. You know, there's a way of looking at things when you're trying to get more complex material together, and all they sometimes will need is a little bit different point of view, a little bit different perspective. I won't know until I know what the roadblock is. So when I'm talking to them doing the Skype class, I'll know right away, oh, you're stuck with that. Okay, I can help you there, because what you do to solve that is you just do this, you know. And I'll have a quick example for them to move through, and it helps them, you know, involve themselves better with their daily routine of study. And, you know, because neck layout, the geometry of the neck, regions of the neck, and all the bar chording problems, and all the problems with learning rhythm patterns and all that can really be a big factor for that intermediate student. It's coming back to the shoulders of the teacher to be able to have these explanations and these tips and these, you know, little ways of explaining things that are going to help that intermediate student blow through the boundaries. So now I would have to say that next to the advanced level students, which I'm going to talk about in a moment, the intermediate level teaching is probably one of the hardest levels of teaching that are out there. It took me years to really develop a level of mastery with being able to help people that are stuck. And I can clearly remember, you know, just thinking back 20 years ago, some of the intermediate level students that I had, where I had a lot of difficulty being able to think of ways to explain material to them and help them understand things better. But, you know, through me just, you know, keeping on and trying and realizing, oh, that works no matter who I tell it to. That statement, you know, with this problem, that always works. So, you know, over the years you develop some skills with it, but I really can't give a lot of tips in terms of intermediate teaching to all the teachers out there, because you have to figure these things out on your own, and literally it takes years and years of interacting with students and realizing what works for your teaching methods to get those intermediate players past their roadblocks. Okay, now I'm going to be offering some advice on the advanced level guitar players. Now, this is really a unique group of player. And at any given point in time, let's say maybe if I'm teaching 30 or 35 people in my studio through a week, I may only really have one or two super advanced players, like really advanced guitar players. Now, first of all, we need to comprehend just exactly what an advanced guitar player is. And that is a guitar player that has some pretty serious gifted experience. And, you know, this type of person, they can work on information on their own like crazy. They dig through stuff like crazy. They are really at a high level of technical proficiency. They probably have a band. They probably are playing in clubs on the weekend. They're jamming with a lot of other people, and they're really active. So when you're at this level and you're with somebody as a teacher, you know, interacting with someone who would be an advanced level guitar player, most teachers won't exactly know how to deal with a student like that, because it seems like everything you show them, they instantly learn it. You know, sometimes just right in front of you, they just do it, and they're like, oh, that's great, I'm glad I know that now. Now what? You know, so it can, sometimes for an inexperienced teacher, it can really be tough on that lesson plan time, whether you're doing lesson plans in hour or 30-minute classes, it can be sort of tough. And I know it was for me many years ago when I would encounter people like this. They were just almost everything you threw at them, they could just do it pretty much instantly. And they seem to know a lot of stuff. You know, you'll explain something to them, and they'll usually have background with other instruments. So they'll say, oh yeah, I did that on piano, or I did that, you know, when I was in high school band and I was playing trumpet, or, you know, like there's all this interaction in their mind musically. A lot of times those people have parents who play musical instruments. So, you know, I taught a young guy once, his dad was in a fairly popular band, and they had done really well. They'd done lots of touring, and the son was, you know, he was just a natural guitar player. And, you know, this kind of, you know, interaction that you have, it's sort of funny because there's almost like a very quick comprehension that goes on with theory and scales and music in general, and it's at a really, really high level. So the issues now that tend to be there when you're trying to teach advanced students are that you need to zero in like a surgeon, you know, on a specific flaw that they probably have that they're trying to resolve. And a lot of times they, as the student, they don't know what that flaw is. They just know that they cannot do a certain thing on guitar, and it's driving them nuts, you know? So they can do all this other stuff, but there's this one thing they're encountering all the time, they can't really do it. And in dealing with those advanced players, you know, as an instructor, you have to dig down and discover what playing elements are missing from the skill set of that student. And once you can find those missing pieces from that student and from the playing situation or whatever that might be, you're going to be able to help them move forward and get past it. But you're going to need, as an instructor, a lot of experience, because advanced students, although they're very rare, they're a very specialized group of musicians. All right, just before we wrap up, I need to discuss one final idea. I would not be doing my job in this video here for teachers and all that if I didn't talk about this. And this has to do with dealing with students who are difficult to work with. Now, these are going to be students that are, you know, mainly having an overall difficult personality type. And as a teacher, you'll need to understand that students who are like this do not just have a problem dealing with you. They have problems dealing with almost everyone they encounter out there. So you, as a teacher, you need to understand that it's not all you when it comes to dealing with difficult personalities. If you're flexible enough with these people, you'll generally find some common ground and you'll be able to cope with them. However, you'll also need to realize that sometimes it just doesn't work out. It's very rare, you know, very rare cases that you're, you know, going to encounter something that just doesn't work between you and a student. And you'll quite likely, if you teach long enough, have a situation where you're going to need to call it quits. I remember one time, quite a long time ago, I would say this is at least almost 20 years ago or more, I had a student who was very difficult, and he was almost to the point being so strange and confrontational and odd in the lesson. I kind of threw my hands up in the middle of the guitar lesson. I said, you know what? I don't think this is working out. And I just reached over into my backpack that I had with me that I would take with me to the classes in the studio I was working in, and I pulled out my checkbook and I wrote him a check for his money back, and I ripped it out and handed it to him, and I said, you know what? I think we need to call this quits. Here's your money back. Go your own way, and maybe you'll find a guitar teacher that you can get along with and things will work out all right with you. I tried to be as civil as I could, but what I think happened in that situation is I really broke this person's momentum because they were out to attack somebody, and I was the person that day that they chose to attack. I had difficulties getting along with this student, from the get-go. They had maybe only done 2 classes with me, and it just was not working out. Now, I'll tell you, I have had over 1,000 students through my school over the last 25, 26 years, and that is the only time that has ever happened where I've had to give somebody their money back. So this is how dead rare this is. It's super, super rare. But sometimes you have to call it quits. I've had some other situations like that too, where I've kind of said after a while, you're not really going forward with your lessons, and it just doesn't seem to be working out for you, and probably, we should wrap this up rather than you waste any of your money on this anymore. So sometimes I try to be very kind about it, but even situations like that are incredibly rare. Most of the time, a student can understand that they're just not getting anywhere. It's not working out. They're not, doing very well, and they just quit, and that's all there is to it. Usually they're quite kind about it. They'll say, well, I need to take a break from lessons, and I'll probably come back in a few months. Usually when I hear things like that, I know that they're never coming back. Sometimes people come back, but it's pretty rare when you hear that slogan, answered that usually they're not coming back. But anyway, if you teach long enough, you are going to encounter some people on the rarest of occasions when it comes to dealing with them. They're going to be extremely difficult. Now, like I said, remember this element of it. What you need to do is you need to find common ground. You need to be able to cope with them and figure out a flexible enough way of dealing with these people. That's why your interpersonal skills as a teacher are paramount. If you have those, you're going to do very well at being a teacher. But, with these really difficult people, like I said, you've got to be flexible enough to deal with them, and you need to find that common ground of how you're going to interact and how you're going to cope with them. And once you find that, things usually work out pretty darn good. Well, I'd like to wrap things up here by saying thanks for joining me. If you want to learn more about what I do as an online guitar teacher, then head over to my website at creativeguitarstudio.com and sign up for your free lifetime membership. When you want more, you can always upgrade to either a basic or a premium lesson package and start studying all the nifty guitar courses I got organized on the website for the members. And you know what? I'd really be interested to hear your thoughts on everything I discussed here. Please leave your comments in the comments section. If you're a teacher and you want to share a few things, please do so. If you're a student and you got some interesting comments to make about teachers that you've had over the years, please leave them in the comments section. I really enjoy reading some of your feedback on all this stuff. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Thanks again, and we'll catch up next week for another episode of the Guitar Blog Insider. Hi everybody, Andrew Wasson here from CreativeGuitarStudio.com. I've been a professional guitarist for over 25 years now, and I've been teaching guitar for even longer than that. But today I want to talk to you about your current situation by discussing the study of guitar and the time that you have available to put into it. If you're like most people, you're working a 9-to-5 job and you're working 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, that's 160 hours a month. How much free time does that leave you left over to study guitar? Let's say you can maybe fit in an hour or so, around 4 or 5 days in a week when you have the free time. And if that is the case, wouldn't you want to make the most of that 1 hour of study, practicing a highly organized, step-by-step, well-structured guitar curriculum? Without a structured plan, it's pretty easy to waste time. A lot of times it happens by just focusing on playing through a bunch of stuff songs riffs you already know, licks that you're familiar with. But practicing stuff you already know will not make you a better guitar player. You need a constant supply of fresh material. If you practice guitar by just playing stuff you already know, before you realize it, time ticks on, time ticks by, and that valuable period of time that you have every day, it gets lost. If left alone, those hours lost every day turn into lost weeks, lost months and then eventually lost years of wasted time. You'll still be the same guitar player that you were before because you never challenged yourself. I've seen it dozens and dozens of times in my own studio here. But you know, you can change that. In the valuable time that you do have every day, you can start studying a comprehensive guitar course that'll not only educate you, but it'll turn you into a well-skilled musician. So if you want to learn more, sign up for a free account through my website at creativeguitarstudio.com. The general access membership is absolutely free to join. Come in, get your feet wet, and when you're ready, you can go for the paid membership. What you'll discover in there is the most comprehensive guitar curriculum available online. I've got 25 years experience teaching guitar and have written a well-organized step-by-step guitar course. Head over to my website at creativeguitarstudio.com and sign up for a free membership today. Join the thousands of members worldwide who have already enrolled. There's no need to try learning the guitar on your own. Let me help you become the best guitar player that you can be.